to rainforests, even if we believe they have nothing to do with our jobs, our businesses, and our daily lives. I also want to learn together with you the solutions to the climate crisis that are available to all of us in different countries and regions. My name is Pancho Campo, and my personal crusade is to show you, through the Planet Future documentaries, the impacts that climate change is having around the world. Because we cannot wait any longer. The time to act is now.
You're joining us at the first Forum on Global Resilience, hosted by the Adrienne Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. And we are here today to accelerate solutions to climate impacts. Floods, fires, drought, hurricanes, and in particular extreme heat, which is killing more people than any other climate-driven hazard. And in fact, killing more people than all of the other hazards combined. And the beauty of this agenda is that there are solutions, and we are advancing those solutions with our partners. And today is about really understanding what those interventions, approaches, policies, financing strategies, what they are, where they are best applied, and how do we accelerate to deepen our impact around the world and to protect people from what we know is coming, which is more temperatures rising, and the impacts on our daily lives are immense. And of course, climate impacts are not hitting people the same way. Disproportionately, people are impacted that are on the lower end of the economic ladder, live in places without the resources to protect them, and that have underlying health conditions. And so today we focus on the most vulnerable and about action that is accelerated and measurable and inspiring above all else.
We've looked at the economic impacts of extreme heat, considering what it does to labour productivity, considering what it does to access to services, assets, health outcomes, and how these are distributed unevenly across the population. We find, just looking at labour productivity alone, that these impacts are very, very large. Bigger in the US than those of the record hurricane season, 2021, even in a normal year. Furthermore, we find that these impacts are distributed unevenly. We look at wages for different populations across the country, different occupations, and different racial groups. And we find that the impacts are concentrated in the south and east, as you would expect, amongst low-income workers who are disproportionately outdoors and in labour-intensive sectors. And also
Hi, my name is Eleni Mirivili. I'm the Chief Heat Officer for the City of Athens and a former Deputy Mayor for the same city. I would like to talk about categorizing and naming heat waves because we have developed in the Arsht Rock Resilience Center, together with the scientists panel, a specific methodology for categorizing and naming heat waves. Heat waves are not categorized because they're very idiosyncratic phenomena, weather phenomena. They are very specific on their impacts on the human body, on when and where they happen. So this categorization, which is going to be piloted in Athens, in Seville, and 4 cities in the United States, have taken the health impact and put it together with the meteorological data to figure out when do heat waves are more dangerous and more risky for people's health. So this is like a real game changer because it's really important for policymakers to figure out when to do what to save lives.
So in Miami Beach, we are seeing a lot of issues when it comes to flooding, and we also see issues when it comes to are experiencing issues with urban heat. That as time goes on and our climate changes, temperatures are beginning to rise. Mm-hmm. So addressing urban heat is one of our goals. We also see impacts when it comes to our beaches. As the climate changes, storms are actually a lot stronger, and so when they come across our city, we see that our beaches are more susceptible through erosion because storm surge is a lot stronger. So on the local population, we know that it really becomes more of like a health issue. Going back to what I said about urban heat, we do see that as the temperature rises, we need to address like issues of how do we protect our residents and visitors when it gets extremely hot. And so we actually established a heat season here in the city, actually in the county. So for May 1st, I want to say for May 1st, starting May 1st, we have about a 6-month period that's considered to be like a heat season, kind of like you have a hurricane season. And so what that does is we're working with the county to engage the population and to let them know, hey, it's going to be extremely hot over the summer. Make sure that you're prepared. Unfortunately, as it gets hotter, we also tend to use more air conditioner. So air conditioning leads to more emissions, and that's actually one of our biggest contributors of emissions in at least Miami Beach. 70% of our emissions come from the built environment, so through electrical use. And so we have a climate action plan in place where we're looking at where all of our emissions are coming from, and we're setting out a series of plans and actions to help us with reducing those numbers over the next few years.
So in Miami, we've always known heat. Many people move here because of our tropical environment. But the days of high heat combined with humidity are getting more frequent and getting more extreme. And so we heard it from our communities. We did a series of focus groups and surveys in the lowest income communities of Miami-Dade County and asked them what their biggest concern was related to climate change. And extreme heat was the top of their list. In Miami, we're known internationally for our risks to sea level rise and flood risk and to hurricanes. But extreme heat was not something that we had been focused on. Like many cities, it has been the silent killer, killing more people every year than any of those other climate hazards combined. And so now it was the time we looked at the data, we looked at where those expected temperatures are going over time, and saw that we need to actually put a very strong lens on extreme heat and come up with solutions across the board. Both how do we mitigate the urban heat islands and how do we manage the heat that's here already. So on the urban heat island, our goal is to get to a 30% tree canopy county-wide. We're now at an average of 20%. And so we're focusing our tree planting and tree giveaway efforts in those neighborhoods with the highest surface temperatures and the least tree canopy, that also tend to be the same neighborhoods that have lower income populations. And so it's critical that we not only plant in the right-of-way and our parks, but we give them trees, because 80% of our land is privately owned. And so we need people to learn how to plant and take care of trees here. Trees that will survive a hurricane, trees that may provide fruit for their families. So we've just gave away thousands of trees over the last and planted over the last few months, and we plan to both plant and give away over 10,000 trees just this summer.
Got me upside down, spinning around you.
Sustainable Wine Growing BC was established by a diverse group of industry experts with the aim of creating a broad and relevant global standard to guide our winemaking and viticulture practices in BC. Our goal is to provide self-assessment tools, educational resources and certification for the BC wine industry and wineries going down the path of sustainability. Since launching our certification in 2021, we have 14 certified vineyards and wineries and many more involved in the path towards certification. Our aim is that all BC wineries and vineyards will choose the path towards sustainability in the near future. Sustainable practices and certification is a commitment to environmental stewardship, economic longevity, and care and respect for people and community.
The Porto Protocol is a place in which growers and producers can interact, learn from each other,
and work towards building a more climate resilient and sustainable wine community.
It requires a united effort from everyone in the world.
And there's no better place to find that than the Porto Protocol.
Look around, sign up, and be part of positive climate action with us.
So, we're waiting for you.
Thompson Okanagan has long been an agricultural and growing area. It's got amazing history with growing soft fruits like cherries and peaches. It's had apples and apricots, and now today we all know it's an incredible wine growing region. Sustainability, which is something that we started to really focus on in 2012, is something that we continue to see as a priority for the Thompson Okanagan region and for our association. We know that in order to preserve this land and this area for people to enjoy for years to come, that it is critical that we work on sustainability together to preserve the land, to preserve the product, and to preserve this incredible outdoor experience that we all get to enjoy so much.
Introducing Wine Alley. Wine Alley is a business system and an app that matches wines with food. Wine Alley will increase revenues for all parts of the wine trade. This is how. The wine market's sleeping potential. 99% or more of all wine consumers visits the 99% of restaurants without a sommelier. 99% of consumers don't know how to find a wine that matches their food and wine preferences. According to a market survey in July of 2021, 72% were willing to spend more on a bottle of wine if they knew it will be a great match to their food. Since 99% of restaurant floor staff lacks the knowledge to offer the service, most wine consumers don't get the wine experiences they are worth. This means a big sales potential is being missed in millions of restaurants around the world. As a result, retail sales is also lower than necessary. How restaurants can increase revenues with Wine Alley. The restaurant registers their dishes in their Wine Alley account, and a dish DNA is automatically produced. Next, the restaurant register their wines. Most wines are already in our database and have all the wine data, verified by the producer or the Wine Alley wine data team, needed to give the wine a correct wine DNA. If the wines is not in our database, we will ensure that we collect the wine data required. The Wine Alley Wine Matcher is based on the world's most extensive wine database, where all wines have a correct wine DNA, the dish DNA created by chefs in restaurants, and the guests' preferences at the occasion. The easy-to-use app makes it possible to comfortably find matching wines. The Wine Matcher can be used by guests having the Wine Alley app, or by the restaurant employee. The Wine Matcher improves wine and dine experiences for the 99% of consumers visiting restaurants without a sommelier. Inexperienced floor staff will be able to recommend matching wines after a short digital introduction. Since 58% of restaurant guests are likely to use a wine matching app, many guests will take care of the wine matching themselves. According to the market survey in 2021, 72% are likely to spend more on wine if they know they will get a matching wine to their meal. Improved guest service will simply increase wine revenues in 99% of restaurants globally. New revenue streams. Wine Alley will also simplify selling wines for takeaway. By asking the restaurant guests that just had a great wine and dine experience if they want a bottle to go, at takeaway price of course, will increase the average restaurant order. The gross profit on the increased up service order will improve the restaurant bottom line result. Another revenue stream comes from takeaway customers using the Wine Alley app to get matching wines to their takeaway food in markets where it is legal. Reduced wine wastage. By using the Wine Alley features for purchases and sales, wine inventory is automatically updated. Combined with registering the physical inventory in Wine Alley, the reasons for wine wastage are easily identified and will be reduced. The wine merchant benefits. With a Wine Alley license, wine merchants will see substantially increased revenues from their HoReCa customers with a Wine Alley license. Consumers using the Wine Alley app will with a simple click be directed to the wine in your web store. Although Wine Alley makes it possible for restaurant customers to find the wine in your web store, we don't ask for commissions. Wine Alley also makes it possible to get digital access to sales and inventory of hotels and restaurants. With valuable customer information, customers most likely to buy can be approached, which will increase revenues and cut costs. Information about customers' wines in stock, ordered or in consignment, can be used to control credit risks and minimize credit losses. Customer wine inventory and sales information will simplify purchases and logistics. Wine Alley is also offering wine merchants all wine data in one standard format, with a portfolio of wines from 100 producers or more. Wine data handling, in most cases, means a yearly possible cost cut of 30 to 50,000 euros. All of the things we've mentioned in this video is obviously also benefiting wine producers all over the world. So to sum it up, consumers are willing to spend more on wine if it's matching their food and wine preferences. Restaurants and wine merchants want to increase revenues and cut costs. And Wine Alley makes it all possible. Please read more and book a presentation at winealley.com. Thank you.
Why is New Zealand food and beverage so outstanding? How long have you got?
New Zealand food is safe, so clean and so pure.
If you haven't tasted New Zealand food and beverage, you're missing out.
You can trust New Zealand seafood. It's sustainable and it tastes really good.
Manuka honey from New Zealand. It's just delicious and healthy for you and your family.
It's so yummy. We've got wonderful pasture here to produce our safe and trusted milk.
Our grass-fed beef is so good because it's raised in a place like this. Check it out.
We're really proud that New Zealand lamb is eaten all around the world.
Caring for your land and people, being a good custodian or kaitiaki, it's everything to us.
New Zealand wine is all about freshness and energy. It tastes like it comes from nowhere else.
We're free to innovate because we're not bound by tradition.
And we make sure that only the best quality goes to market.
The most important ingredient is care.
We make it and grow it with love.
A little bit of care and a little bit of love can change everything.
What I love about old vine material, and I look for old vine material on sand, it's what our family's always done, but it's the consistency of that product each year. You've got Langmore with the Freedom Shiraz Vineyard, you've obviously got Penfolds with the Block 42 Cabernet. Guys like the Koch family, which Dean Hewitson takes for his old garden. But there's numerous. There's so much old material around, and you know, look, there's a lot of conversations about old vine material, but there's a reason it stayed in the ground in the Barossa, is it always grew good fruit. That's the beauty of our climate where we are. So hopefully people keep their head together and look after these old things. They are hard work.
must say, I think it helped us a lot to structure it much better, and also to not only manage it, but also measure it. It looks at a lot of different factors, of course, the farming sprays and stuff that we use in the vineyards, fertilizers and all of those things. And then when it comes to the winery, it looks at all the additions you make to your wines, the amount of water you use, what do you do with your effluent, do you manage it, do you measure it, the amount of electricity you use, your carbon footprint, your emissions. When you look at wine being produced by the IPW system, you can be sure that it's friendly wines being made in a sustainable way with products that is recognized and allowed internationally, not only in South Africa.
It's not about ticking boxes. This is about, because again, it's not just about the consumer. Remember, it's about helping ourselves as producers to see, okay, fine, this is what I did. Oh, okay, this might help again. I need to focus on this. I need to grow on this. It just happened that this is what we're doing. Actually, that's what the world is looking for, to be compliant for your own good. Because just be a good human being, be compliant. Because it's not really about what the other people see. It's about what is your conscience say to you about how you actually helping the environment, how you're helping the people who are working with you, who are helping you to build what you're building. If you want to be part of the global trade, to be out in the globe, to be out in the consumers, you need to give them that trust and that confidence that your things are in order, that you care.
Our next session on how to efficiently manage your water in making wine is being moderated by David Graves, who is a Northern California native. Now, he graduated from the University of California in Santa Cruz, thinking that he was headed for a career in academic science, but grape growing and winemaking called to him, and he put his science background to work for a career in wine. In 1981, he founded Saintsbury Winery in the Carneros region of Napa and Sonoma with his late friend Richard Ward. Environmental stewardship has always been important to him, and now more than ever, and he's committed to ensuring a sustainable future for wine. He and his wife, Elizabeth McKinney, live in downtown Napa. David, welcome to Green Wine Future.
Thank you. The whole area of water relations obviously is important to us who grow grapes in the Mediterranean regions, especially. Certainly the last 20 years of a drier than normal period in California has really focused attention we're now entering the third year of a drought here in Northern California. We've had the driest 22 years apparently in the last 1200, according to the climate scientists. The stress on our surface waters is considerable. The stress on our groundwater supply has been considerable, and the depletion of our groundwater in large areas of California has been a great concern. We're in the midst of implementing the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act in California, which is a real game changer. And of course, we've had for those of you who follow California weather, we've had a very odd year. Lots of rain to begin with, and then basically no rain after the beginning of the calendar year. So we're really focused on how to implement really radical conservation, the likes of which I don't think we've ever had to deal with before. And we're trying to understand how to minimize the amount of water we use, how to maximize the utility of what we do use, how to maintain production. And meanwhile, we're keeping an eye on extreme heat events, the stress on the grapevines caused by the so-called vapor pressure deficit, and meanwhile trying to run our very productive wine industry and maintain environmental stewardship. So I have to take my hat off to my colleagues, because the stress on them and the stress that we're all trying to deal with is considerable. And I think the community rightly views us as a very important part of the economic and social environment, but also they really want us to do the right thing in terms of environmental stewardship, and they want us to do that into the future. So with that context for our local environment, obviously in both in the northern and southern hemisphere, water management is right at the front of sustainable wine growing now and in the future. So that's I think I'm stating the obvious, but that's certainly our lived experience here, and I think everybody else in the wine industry is dealing with the same kinds of issues. So that's let's hear from our other panelists.
Greetings from Montalcino, from the land of Brunello di Montalcino. We are in southern Tuscany, in the province of Siena, and we are just underneath the Amiata mountain, the highest mountain in Tuscany. The weather in this part of Montalcino is very much affected by this mountain, because the weather fronts come from the coast and drop the rain on the mountain. And this part of Montalcino is spared the rain on most occasions. So we are very concerned about the climatic change and the droughts that we are seeing ever so often in this part of Montalcino. In fact, we are in a drought situation just now, and we had a severe drought in 2012 and 2017. As you can see from the vineyard behind me, there is no irrigation installed in this vineyard. In fact, until not so many years ago, we were not allowed to irrigate our vineyards. I want to share with you a very exciting research project we conducted in this vineyard, and I will use a university thesis written by a student of agronomy, of viticulture of the University of Florence, to give you all interesting details of how this zeolite, how this volcanic rock can affect the behavior of the soil and the water retention of the soil. So I have put together a presentation, the slides that I'll show you now, to give you all the details of this interesting research project. It is called Life ZeoWine. It's a demonstration project that aims to improve the protection and management of the soil, the well-being of the vine, and the quality of grapes and wine through the application to the soil of an innovative ZeoWine product. So I'm going to use the material put together at the University of Florence in the course of viticulture under the direction of Professor Giovan Battista Mattii. The work was executed by a student called Maddalena Fucile in the year 2020. The information I'm going to show you was put together through field and laboratory analysis aimed at investigating the effectiveness of ZeoWine in terms of improving the physiological activity of plants, net photosynthesis, stomatal conductance, transpiration and water use efficiency, and the quality of the produced grapes, sugar concentration at harvest time, total and extractable anthocyanins and polyphenols. The analyses that were carried out allow us to state that the application to the soil of the ZeoWine is effective in improving the grapes and consequently the quality in the production area of Brunello di Montalcino. Moreover, this practice was found to be sustainable as it allows to recycle the byproducts of the supply chain. So the study was performed on one of the vineyards of Coldorcia in Montalcino, one of the Brunello vineyards, called Nastagio Carrata. It is a vineyard, well, the whole estate is certified organic. I gave you here the latitude and longitude, so 43 degrees north. Best area for grape production in the world. The vineyard I planted in the year 2006. The variety is Sangiovese, and in fact it's a clonal selection. It's clone number 7 from the Chianti 2000 clonal selection. The rootstock is 420A, which we use extensively on the estate. The density of planting is 6,000 plants per hectare, so reasonably high density. And here you have a picture of the vineyard. So the other details of the vineyard, Nastagio Carrata, is that the fertilization takes place through the use of green manure and compost. The soil composition is, as you can see, almost half of it sandy. The pH is a quite alkaline soil, 8.3. Very low organic material, below 2%. 25% of limestone, and that goes hand in hand with the alkaline condition of the soil, and also a very low nitrogen content in the soil. The study was divided in 2 treatments, one entitled compost and the other one entitled zeowine. The distribution of compost and the zeowine took place on May 19, 2020. And as an additional piece of information, the 2 treatments were distributed according to a randomized block scheme, as it's customary in research projects. So the zeowine composition that we used is compost on one hand, manure that comes from the mountain, the Amiata mountain, from an organic farm. Straw, we have a lot of cereals produced on the estate, so we have a fair amount of straw that we use always in our compost. The prunings from the vineyard and from the olive trees as well, stalks and other byproducts from the vinification. And for zeowine, we added to the same compost, we added 10% of zeolite in a granular form. The total compost that was distributed per hectare, equivalent 20 tons. So the cost of applying this 10% of zeolite to a hectare is in fact 1,000 euros. So we're talking about 2 tons of zeolite, considering the 20 tons per hectare and the 10% factor. The zeolite, just to be more precise about the origin of this mineral rock, it's aluminosilicate of volcanic origin, so we are using a natural zeolite. There are synthetic zeolites as well, but we decided to use a natural one. It's 90% pure, and it was extracted in a mine in Slovakia, in the Republic of Slovakia. So here you can see the same compost with the zeolite. The white stuff that you see on top of the compost just before mixing is in fact the granular zeolite in a proportion of 10%. The details of the 2020 growing season, in which the test and the readings took place. Here you have the monthly average temperatures. We had a fairly good season in terms of climate. We did not have the very severe heat waves that are one of the features of the climatic changes in recent years. So a moderate heat compared with some excesses we've seen in recent years. In terms of rainfall, it was a good year. We had rainfall, as you can see here on the chart, and at harvest time as well. So it was representative of a year that may have an average of about 700 millimeters of rain in the 12 months. So let's get to the readings that were conducted by the student of the University of Florence in the 2 samples, the one zeowine, the other one compost. And in terms of leaf surface, this is leaf surface taken at harvest time. So at the end of August, beginning of September. And as you can see here, there is a visible difference in terms of the leaf surface, that growth of leaf surface of the zeowine sample as opposed to compost. Now I'm going to show you some charts of different readings. As I remind you that the red line is the one just compost by itself, and the yellow line is the compost plus zeolite, in other words, the zeowine. The readings that have the black asterisks at the bottom are readings that where the difference between the two lines is sufficient to be significant. So here we have a water use efficiency reading in July and in August, all the way up to the harvest. And as you can see, towards the end of the season, the water use efficiency reduces the gap between the two samples. But all through July and August, we have a good difference, an interesting difference between the two readings. Then we have the transpiration rate of the two samples, and here again we have a smaller difference than the reading before, but interesting, in my view, the fact that there is a difference altogether. The net photosynthesis of the two readings, and here an interesting gap, visible and sizable. Midday water potential. Here again, the zeowine has a higher water potential, as you can see on the chart. And then we come to the sugar content of the samples all the way into the harvest. So in the 2 weeks preceding the harvest, we had not huge difference in terms of sugar content, but all the same a reading with sufficient difference between the two samples to be significant and to warrant the black asterisk, as you can see. The berry weight here we have going into the harvest a increasing difference between the compost reading, the red line, and the zeowine yellow line weight of each berry of the grapes. Total anthocyanins. This is also, I believe, a very interesting reading. And extractable anthocyanins. It's interesting how through the last part of the summer there's not that much difference, but as we get to full ripeness, the gap starts widening. There's no black asterisk here, but it would have been interesting to see it a little bit longer over time. Polyphenols, not much difference here except around 26th of August, but some more difference in the extractable polyphenols, as you can see here. I think the results are really very interesting. We can reach as a conclusion that the synergy of zeolite and compost is a better choice than compared with just compost by itself. It does increase the water retention capacity. It is actually estimated in 8 cubic meter per hectare in the doses of 10% of zeolite as we applied with the compost in this vineyard. It's also considered to increase the enzymatic activity related to the nutrient cycle, the absorption by the plant of the nutrients in the soil, as well as improving the soil structure of the organic material structure. The higher stability in yields of the vineyard over time is also hopefully an advantage that we may witness. And all in all, an increased sustainability of the wine supply chain thanks to the use of waste from the winter pruning and from other activities in the vineyard. So a very interesting project as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to expand it here in my vineyard. I'm going to increase the surface that in which I'm going to apply zeolite, and I'm going to continue researching and seeking results of the difference between the area treated with zeolite as opposed to the one that I have not treated. More results to come in the future. You are invited to come and visit. You're invited to come and share your experiences, and I'm very happy to share the ones we conduct here at Coldorcia, not only with zeolite, with other projects, other research projects over time. So hope to see you here in Montalcino, hope to see you here in Coldorcia. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Hello everyone, my name is Graham O'Rourke. I'm the viticulturist owner of Tightrope Winery in Penticton, British Columbia. Been asked to do a little video on our irrigation strategies as far as the tools and the thoughts. Just a snapshot of the Okanagan Valley. We get our water through a water reservoir system that is regulated on a 2-inch line at 80 psi, and that's the only regulations we have. We use drip irrigation here, and yeah, we'll show you some of the tools and what we have here at Tightrope. All right, we're in one of our Pinot Noir blocks, and like I mentioned a second ago, we are in early May in a very cool season, but this is one of my tools, very useful for 2 reasons. One, early season startup. It'll let me know through soil moisture, soil temperature, when's a good time to start my irrigation in the spring. And it also is a very valuable tool for when we do get a rainfall here, which is fairly rare during the growing season. It'll tell me how far the moisture went into the soil. And like I said, it's a ranch system originating from South Africa, sold through California now. Temperature, humidity sensor, and the soil moisture probe that has sensors at 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, and 80 centimeters depths. And at that depth, it also gives me soil temperature. Wireless SMS, straight to the computer, and I can watch it at any time. Like an excellent tool for those 2 reasons: early season startup and after a rainfall. All right, everyone, thanks. We're now in a different area of the vineyard, but I wanted to talk about one of the other tools I use outside of my soil moisture probe, and then of course all your visual touchy-feely sort of symptoms the visuals that you can look for in irrigation. This here is a pressure chamber, and it measures leaf moisture sensor at the time you take the sample. And here at Tightrope, it's midday every day, and it's about 6 samples a block. And I get a pressure, and I can't do it now because I do it from bloom to veraison. But we get a number of bar, and that's basically the pressure the plant needs to give us its moisture reading. And you can really use this tool to direct the style of wine. For example, in our Pinot Noir blocks that I use for rosé, I don't let the pressure get above 8 or 9 bar. Whereas, because we're looking for a fruitier, a little bit lighter, a little fresher style of wine. So just simply the irrigation, that's where we're at with the pressure chamber. Now the same varietal, Pinot Noir, here at Tightrope, when I'm making the red wine from it, I'll let the pressures go up to around 12 to 13, even 14. I'm looking for the plant to work a little bit harder to slow the growth of the canopy and ultimately to ripen the fruit at an optimal level for that wine. So it is a great tool to use for irrigation, and you can use your irrigation to direct the style of wine that your winemaker is trying to make. Different varieties can handle different pressures. You know, in the whites in our Pinot Gris here, we're whole cluster stainless steel, cool ferment. Again, we're looking, like I don't let the plant stress more than say 8 or 9 bars. Whereas the Cabernet Franc, more of a fuller bodied, bigger red, like you guys would all know of, you can let the pressures in Cab go to 16, 17, and before you get the water going again. Our soils here, just an idea, glacial silt till holds a lot of moisture, but also we know that it holds it very tightly. So we have to irrigate around that. A little snapshot of Penticton. We usually get 13 to 14 inches of rain in a year, but it does come in the form of snow through the winter months. During the growing season, we don't see a lot of water. So we and most growers in the Okanagan are utilizing drip irrigation to manage their canopies. Unfortunately, there are a few archaic, older vineyards who do rely on overhead irrigation, and when you're in an area where you can hit 36 to 37 degrees Celsius with windy, long, narrow valleys, quite windy, you see a lot of irrigation going on in the middle of the day, and we know evapotranspiration is a big deal, and a lot of that water is not actually hitting its target. So if you're trying to be a sustainable grower, wanting to be a sustainable grower, or trying to achieve that, I recommend very heavily, very forcefully, the use of drip irrigation in your vineyards. Again, thanks for allowing me to do this short video, and if you have questions, you know, we definitely can answer those questions for you. 6 to 7 minutes is not nearly enough time to give you the grand scope of irrigation strategies for the Okanagan Valley.
Hello, I'm Tom Chaplin, the CEO and co-founder of Thule. Today I'm going to talk about the science of evapotranspiration. First, let's define evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is the amount of water a crop field uses. In other words, it's the water loss through evaporation from plant and soil surfaces, and the water loss through transpiration from within plant tissues. You may have heard of reference evapotranspiration. Reference evapotranspiration, which is provided by CIMMYS, tells you how much water a well-watered lawn uses. Actual evapotranspiration is the amount of water your field uses. Actual evapotranspiration is the amount of water actually used by a farm field. Reference ET tells you about the water use of a lawn. Actual ET is the water use of that particular piece of land. Actual evapotranspiration goes up on hot and sunny days. A plant with more leaf area uses more water compared to a plant with less leaf area. So canopy size is also important for evapotranspiration. And finally, if a plant is water stressed, it uses less water, so evapotranspiration goes down. That is, as plants encounter water deficits in the soil, they regulate their water use and evapotranspiration goes down. A lysimeter is one of the ways to measure evapotranspiration. A lysimeter is a truck scale that's buried in the soil. On top of that truck scale is a pot, and in that pot are plants. As those plants use water, the pot gets lighter, and the lysimeter measures the water use by measuring the loss in weight in that pot. Another approach to measuring evapotranspiration is to use aerodynamic methods. We're going to talk about two of those, eddy covariance and surface renewal. We're going to start by talking about the energy balance. The energy balance describes how much energy goes into an ecosystem and where that energy goes once it's come into an ecosystem. The energy that goes into an ecosystem like this vineyard here comes from the sun, and that energy is either going to get absorbed by the ground or go into ground heat flux. It's going to go into warming the air or go into sensible heat flux, or it's going to go into vaporizing water, also known as latent heat flux. If we're looking at evapotranspiration over the course of the day, we can ignore the ground heat flux part because the amount of energy that goes into the soil over the course of the day is about equal to the amount of energy that comes out at night. So now we have an equation that says the energy received by an ecosystem goes into either warming the air or vaporizing water. We can rearrange that equation, and we now have something that says if you want to know the latent heat flux or the evapotranspiration, just take the energy received by the ecosystem from the sun and subtract away the energy that went into warming the air. How do we measure the energy that went into warming the air? Eddy covariance is one of the measurement methods for measuring how much energy went into warming the air. These are very expensive instruments. They're delicate and require frequent maintenance. And because of that, eddy covariance is not a technology that can be scaled across lots of farm fields and across many different locations. You need a scientist to run it. But eddy covariance is essentially looking at the vertical movement of heat out of the ecosystem by directly measuring the vertical wind speed and multiplying it by the temperature associated with each one of those vertical moving eddies of air. Another method for measuring sensible heat flux is called surface renewal. Surface renewal looks at the heat that goes into each individual eddy of air that comes in contact with the surface. It quantifies how much heat goes into each eddy of air and how many eddies of air come in contact with that farm field. And if you know how many eddies came in contact with this farm field and how much heat went into each of them, you know how much energy went from the surface of that farm field to the atmosphere. So now let's go back to our energy balance equation. We can get the net radiation using satellites. Satellites are really good at measuring light and reflected light, but they're not good at measuring airflow because they're out in outer space. So at Thule, we measure the sensible heat flux using the UC Davis developed surface renewal technique. And once we have the sensible heat flux, we can measure the latent heat flux because we take the net radiation, we subtract away the sensible heat flux, and what we're left with is the latent heat flux, or the actual evapotranspiration. That's it.
In the North Coast, we have a lot of rainfall during the winter. That allows us to store that rainfall in the soil. That means we normally start the year off with a full profile of moisture here in the North Coast, which means that we don't need to irrigate right away. In fact, I like to allow the vines to extract that rain-fed natural moisture as much as possible before we even consider irrigation. And in so doing, the vines grow their roots out to explore a large volume of soil and extract nutrients from the soil without having to irrigate. One of our primary goals in manipulating water to the vineyard is to allow it to grow and then grow to a sufficient canopy size and then slow its growth and then eventually stop so that it can return its energy into the fruit. We do that by controlling the water availability to the vine, which means manipulating the stress on the vine. And so that's why it's so important to monitor the vine stress and the soil moisture so that we have that whole ability to control that stress on the vine. There's something called the magic window. It runs from about 2 weeks prior to softening or veraison and through the completion of veraison. It's about a 3, maybe 4 week period of time during the growing season. When we stress the vines, it actually stimulates the production of enzymes that are used in the production of flavor components and phenolic components in the fruit. By stressing the vines during that critical magic window, we actually improve wine quality by stimulating those enzymes. When we're looking at visual symptoms in vines, especially shoot tips, it's important not just to look at 1 or 2 shoot tips, but to look at the collection of the shoot tips down a row, down the whole vine row, so we get the idea of what the collective condition of the vines are. The easiest and most effective way to tell how stressed your vines are, especially early in the season, is by looking at the shoot tips. So what I'm holding here is an actively growing shoot tip. And you see how the shoot tip here and the tendrils, if I kind of pinch them with my hand, are well past the shoot tip. That's indicating a very rapidly growing shoot tip in a plant that needs no water. Here's an example of a shoot tip that's slowing down a little bit. So you see that the shoot tips here, there's still some tendrils that are reaching past it, but a lot of these leaves are here that are growing, are starting to grow and catch up with the shoot tip. Or in other words, the shoot tip is slowing down and these leaves are growing and catching up with the shoot tip. This vine still doesn't need water, but it's getting closer. Here's an example of a shoot tip that's slowing its growth. You notice that there's no more tendrils growing past the shoot tip. You also notice that these young leaves are actually, if you push them up a little bit, they're actually extending to or a little bit past the shoot tip. And so here we're getting to a point where we're going to be irrigating this vine potentially in a couple of weeks. This is a shoot tip that's essentially stopped growing. You notice there's no tendrils sticking out, and you also notice that the shoot tip is really buried within all these new leaves. If you kind of run your hand up here, you don't even see the shoot tip. So this is the condition where the vine is ready to start irrigating. This is an example of a shoot where the shoot tip has not only stopped growing, but has actually died and begun to fall off. It doesn't mean the vine's in trouble, but it does mean that the vines need to be irrigated. This is a leaf porometer device. It's used to measure stomatal conductance. Stomata are leaf pores, and in grapes they're found on the underside of the leaf. There are about 200 of these stomata per square millimeter on a grape leaf. The stomata are used to regulate water exit from the leaf. So when the vine's under stress, especially water stress, those stomata close, reducing the release of water from the leaf, thereby conserving moisture. This is a pressure chamber device, sometimes called a pressure bomb. It's used to measure leaf water potential. What is leaf water potential? It's essentially the suction or tension within the vessels of the plant. So when water is less available to the plant, it has to pull harder to get that moisture out of the ground. This is measuring that suction or tension within the column of water in the vessels. It's a cylinder full of compressed air. Actually, we use compressed nitrogen gas that goes into this chamber here. This chamber is where we put the leaf. This is a gauge that's displaying the pressure inside of this chamber. We use this gauge to determine how much suction is in the leaf that's in this chamber. When we measure soil moisture, it's important to measure not only at one depth, but at multiple depths. So this type of device that I'm holding in my hand is what's called a probe, or soil moisture probe. It's got sensors all the way down from 8 inches down to 48 inches. And we're measuring continuously because this is an electronic device that stores the readings inside of it. This is one of our soil moisture probes installed in the soil. We install it once and leave it there 365 days a year, and it's always collecting data. Notice how we've installed it near an emitter. So the emitter drops its moisture right near the probe. We can pick up the wetted plume that way. We install one of these in every block. We look for the weaker portion of the block to install it. If we irrigate to the weaker portion of the block, the rest of the block gets irrigated sufficiently. Another tool that growers can use to determine their irrigation needs is a service provided by the Western Weather Group. It's free for Sonoma County growers. We're here with Steve Harrow from Vino Farms, and he's going to tell us about it.
And Mark, we're standing in front of one of 12 stations that the Western Weather Group supplies to us. Two of the things that I use the data for is frost control and irrigation scheduling. Frost control, it allows me to turn on the system at precisely the right time for the maximum control, but yet it also allows me to turn the system off at a time where we're saving water. As far as irrigation, it's much of the same thing. It tells me how much water to put on and when to put the water on. This is one of our stations located here in the Alexander Valley. It has a full suite of instruments on it. As you can see here, it has the air temperature and relative humidity, powered by a solar panel here. We have solar radiation that's collected up here, and our rain gauge up here to the left. And then everything is done via telemetry with a wind at the top there and beamed out of here and available on the web.
Weather stations provide reference evapotranspiration, also called ETO, measurements for irrigation scheduling. ETO values are updated daily in the weather forecast for growers to make the best use of available water. ETO represents the evapotranspiration rate of a 4 to 7 inch tall, cool season grass that is not water stressed. The Sonoma County Wine Grape Commission provides a weather webpage for growers so they can manage their crops based on the changes in the weather. Near real-time data is available to Sonoma County Wine Grape Commission growers through web apps designed for smartphones. Sonoma County growers have an advantage in making informed decisions on what affects their crops the most, the weather. Thanks, Steve, for showing us this today. It's a great resource for Sonoma County growers to use, even on its own.
I couldn't agree more.
By using these few tips I've shown you today about measuring soil and about measuring the vines, we can not only save water, but we can make better wine.
So now that we've started using more advanced techniques and really carefully monitoring the water status of our vineyard, we've seen multiple benefits. We've seen a smaller canopy, so we do less canopy manipulation. We don't have to remove as much of the extra growth in the vineyard. And of course, we're using less water now. And we're seeing better quality in the bottle because we get more of the energy of the vine directed toward the fruit during veraison and after veraison. So it's really a win-win for us.
Hello, David.
Hello, David. Hello, Francesco. Hello, Tom.
Hi.
David, can you make sure that you're not muted, please? We need your audio. Still not hearing you? Well, hello to Toscana. Hello to California. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for participating in Green Wine Future. Happy to have you here. That was very, I really enjoyed hearing what you did with this zeolite in Tuscany, Francesco. I know we spoke about it even a couple of months ago with your colleague there in the vineyard. It was very exciting. I was really looking forward to what you actually produced here. David, do we have you live yet? Oh, apparently not. Okay. So Francesco, if you could please illuminate us a little bit more, maybe what progress you've seen, even in the short time since you've created that video, and how. And I'm also curious, have you actually noticed any difference in the quality of the wine once it's made from these things? I know it's difficult to track, I know, but I'm curious.
Well, yes, more difficult to track is small samples, so we haven't been able to get that much time. But as I said in the video, I'm expanding the trial. I'm really going for a couple of hectares of vineyard, so as to have more tangible results. In any event, in the tasting room in the cellar, the enologists, the winemakers absolutely sponsored the increase of the use of zeolite, and they believe we have something quite interesting in terms of better ripening, loss of some green balsamic features that appear, especially now that we try to manage